Hello, everyone's Price Focus. Hopefully, you're not feeling like a zombie this morning after the joy and stress of watching Nottingham Forest 1-1 draw with Liverpool last night. We'll discuss what's in our heads after that enthralling game and the latest transfer news as West Ham step up their pursuit of Taiwo Awoniyi in the company of, first of all, Pete Blackburn. Pete, morning. How you doing?
Absolutely knackered, but happy to be here and loving your intro. Excellent work, pal. You're really coming on. That's lovely stuff.
Thank you. I did make myself smile with that. That was the crowd were one of the stars of the show last night with that chant to Arne Slot. So we'll get into all that. But first, let's introduce Michael Temple. Temps, how are you?
Am I the only one that's done my hair this morning? Or am I being unfair to Garry Birtles?
I haven't got it. Well,
I'm feeling good, fellas. Enjoyed last night and looking forward to Sunday.
My mum had a go at me this morning. They stayed over, helped the kids to school, and my mum had a moan at me brushing hair when leaving the house to take the kids down. So it's like she hasn't seen me for 20 years or something, because that's how it always is. But there you go. Reds legend Garry Birtles, morning. How are you?
Yeah, very good, thank you. Yeah,
excellent. Let's get into it then. Pete, kick us off. General thoughts on the game, the occasion, the noise. It was one to remember, I guess, even though we didn't win the game.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, for me, I guess two sort of dominant feelings. Pride and exhaustion, I think. It's been a long time since a game played just so heavily on my mind and body. It was all I could think about for the couple of days before. And then the occasion itself was absolutely knackering. I think we kicked every ball and felt the pain of every tired sprint that the players were putting themselves through as that game wore on. And, you know, they really did have to suffer. So that sense of exhaustion is pretty palpable. And I think maybe a little bit of that flatness that comes after an event that has loomed so large in the consciousness, and it's sort of passed and it's on to the next thing, I guess. But as I say, the other real feeling for me is pride. I don't think any player wearing red last night could have done any more, given any more. Really, they laid their bodies on the line and to try and get something from that game until the very end. And I think it's easy to forget from all the sort of tribalism and the fan rivalries and stuff that, we shouldn't be on that sort of level. Everything is stacked against us. We're playing against a team that's got, eight or nine players who cost more than our record transfer. We're not supposed to be on the level that they are, but we competed until the very end. Could easily have taken 3 points away from it if we hadn't have had a slight little lapse. Obviously, we have to work incredibly hard to get to that point anyway. But I thought the players did us absolutely proud. So yeah, tonight I think it was a sign of how far we've come in all senses, to see the fans step up and drag the team through it, given the antipathy and misery we all were feeling not many years ago. To see a brilliant team of players, brilliantly recruited, giving their everything for the badge. And they're just better than the sum of their parts, aren't they? I mean, it's just a real magic going on right now. It's an absolute privilege to be there. Last night was noisy beyond belief. Felt like we were really part of something special. So yeah, absolutely knackered. I can only imagine the players are covered in glorious bruises and unfolding themselves out of bed this morning, just like I was. But above all, yeah, just really proud.
Excellent. Good morning to 300 people who are with us already. That, as Dansky says, that was a Partridge intro. It could have been on Radio Norfolk, but it's on Forest Focus. So do us a favour and hit like and subscribe if you haven't already. What was your big takeaway, Temps, from the game?
It was loud last night. I think the first thing that lived with me is the return of that atmosphere. That was as loud when Chris Wood scored as I've known it at Forest. I think this is the season in which, for the first time in a generation, we've gone toe-to-toe with Liverpool. And if you look at the pattern of the games, you can see why we are where we are. At Anfield, we had to dig in, make the game shorter. Then there was those impact subs that made the difference. Hudson-Odoi grabbed the goal. Last night was about defensive resilience. We had a chance and took it first half. We'd been under the gun first 10 minutes and we were clinging on towards the end, but we did cling on. It was that great stat from Mark Southern this morning. Murillo, 18 clearances, most by a Premier League player this season. He was absolutely everywhere. And there was some no-nonsense defending last night. There were times when we had to hoof it rather than pick the pass, but that's what we had to do to secure the point. And I think that will prove to be a massive point as we see those around us. And I'm talking about Man City and Chelsea here. Make that threshold, that bar to make the top five just become closer and closer to our reach. But after that performance, that resilience, I'm more confident than ever that we'll get there.
How do you think our players will view it, Garry? You'll have been in those positions where you come away with a point. Is there still going to be that tinge of disappointment when you're leading or not? Or will they just be fully, glass half full after that one?
I think everybody was saying, yeah, it was great to get a point. Would have taken a point before the game, but there's also a little bit of a hint of disappointment that we didn't get all three, because that's how far we've come this season. We're up there, rightly so, with the big boys. We're not out of place there. It's no fluke. I've said this before. And there's a real togetherness in that team and that squad at the moment. I did talk sport this morning with Ali McCoist and Alan Brazil, and they both brought that up. They said there seems a real unity within the club, within the players, and you can see that. And the one thing last night that was obviously overwhelming was their possession stats were massive again. But the problem for us last night, I think we did a hell of a lot without the ball. We had to do a hell of a lot without the ball, and that's difficult, believe me. It's easy on the ball, as Liverpool showed you. But when you've not got the ball for a long periods of time, and they were moving it so well, Liverpool, and the concentration levels, I thought, from us last night were absolutely staggeringly good. We're terrific at the back. The goalkeeper, how he did get man of the match, I don't know. I mean, they gave it to Chris because that finish it looked quite easy. But believe me, again, I spoke with Brazil and McCoist, and those two could finish. And that's he guided it in there. He could have panicked. That's the only place he could have probably put it without smashing it. And it was perfection, the finish. And that's what he gives you now. He's got all those finishes. He's not a one-trick pony. And, to score early on and silence the Liverpool crowd behind that goal was a pleasure to watch.
Yeah, I mean, there were so many great individual performances, Pete, and we'll get into those, but also collectively as well. We've seen so many times in the last 2 seasons, especially with our lack of Premier League experience, we concede a late goal, even against Liverpool last season. You take away, if you exclude the drop ball thing and just the fact we didn't clear the ball, the concentration levels were immense to get over the line there in the face of a lot of pressure, to be fair.
Matt, can I just say one thing on that? I don't think their goal should have stood.
Oh, okay. Because of the
I think Alan Hill, I sat next to Alan Hill afterwards. I couldn't see it from the stand, but when we watched it afterwards, Alan Hill said, as a goalkeeper, he said, that was a foul. That was obstruction. Anywhere else on the pitch, the referee to give him a free kick. He stopped Matz Sels coming to get that ball. He backed himself into him. There was contact, and I don't think he should have stood.
Oh, let's go around the room then. Pete, any complaints about the goal? Is it one where the VAR is not going to overturn it?
I'm not sure, to be honest, because I obviously couldn't see well in the ground, and I've only watched a replay once this morning. So I'm not remotely clear about that. I mean, I know it looked pretty obvious that Gibbs White was irritated about that and was trying to make the case to the ref, but I haven't looked over it enough to know really. But I would take Garry and Alan's views on that for sure.
Have you seen it more attempts or not?
Yeah, I think the goal should stand. Cody Gakpo does something very clever. He bends his hips, so there's no foul of the upper body. He's not shoulder barging. He's effectively dropping his backside into Matz Sels, giving himself a strong position. He can't get around him. I think the keeper's got to be a bit stronger in that moment. But what Gakpo does is subtle and happens at every corner in every Premier League game. So fair goal as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, but some people give that as a foul. You've seen it happen. And by the way, I thought the referee was awful last night. I thought the number of yellow cards he gave us to the ones he should have given them was just terrible.
I'll pipe in on that one as well. So I think he tried to let the game flow. He tried not to stop it. But then he gave Yatesy the yellow card for the same incident that Morgan Gibbs-White had been a victim of 20 minutes earlier when he was wrapped up and couldn't get the counter going. So he set his stall at different levels. And I think that was slightly in their favour. I agreed with his general desire to let the game flow. He didn't blow up. He let things go both sides. But he got his yellow cards wrong because he set different thresholds for the two teams.
Yeah. I thought he wanted to he let a lot go first half and not so much second half, I would say. But I've seen worse refs. As long as he's not pivotal to the result, I'm not as fussed. But I hear what you're saying. A lot of people said that online. Just before we get back to Pete and that wider point, I'm duty bound and very happy to thank every new member. So Jackson Bollock, thank you for your support. Very much appreciate that. And also PR3 Stag 3. So yeah, wonderful names today. Thank you for signing up for membership. Pete, wider point, we'll go all the way back to concentration, seeing a game out and all that stuff before we get into individuals.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's an enormous positive, but it is also something to be aware of. I think that Garry mentioned earlier. It is phenomenal, the level of concentration and the intensity that they had to go through to get to that position. And I think we saw that the players were pretty knackered as that second half wore on. And we were chatting just before starting about, it did feel like perhaps there was a slight lack of confidence in whether you could bring the players on from the bench in such a difficult circumstance, because every player on that pitch had to do an enormous job. I think for me, the wingers really stood out because the amount of work they had to do supporting their fullbacks, while also then in the moments where they did have the ball, they had to carry the ball at the pitch, keep it so that we had, those moments to get up, to have a bit of a breather, and then use the ball well, because we really didn't have an awful lot of it. I think it's an enormous job. I saw that throughout the team. The work rate was absolutely astonishing, but also the way they did it with the discipline they did it with. I just think we're so well coached, and we are that cliched thing about football is the one thing that we all sort of hope for. I think certainly I do when I see a team, is that you find a way of being more than the sum of your parts, and we are that through the coaching, through the shape, through the discipline, through that unbelievable team spirit that they've clearly got. But it does come with difficulties. I just think you could see that they were absolutely shattered. I think particularly the wingers, Anderson, the fullbacks. It's an enormous amount of effort that they had to go through, and I'm not sure if it's the players on the bench who can come into that incredibly difficult situation and do it. And I think in particular we saw it with Jota coming on. Suddenly Gakpo was getting an awful lot of joy. Jota was sort of diving into the challenges rather than holding his man, maybe just struggling to keep the ball when we really need you to get up the pitch, that sort of thing. So it's an incredibly difficult circumstance, and I should think they're absolutely shattered. But I guess the next step for us will be to develop the players on the bench, to bring in more players so that we've got a slightly bigger pool for these types of games, because I think it's asking far too much for those players to be able to do it for 90 minutes, because it is a difficult way of playing that we have. Playing off the ball like we do is much harder than having the ball. So yeah, I think that's probably going to be the next step in the development for the side, to be honest.
I like Garry back in.
Sorry.
No, it's all right. Don't worry.
People ringing me.
You're a popular man. That leads nicely into one of the things we were going to discuss, Garry, around the timing of the subs. We discussed it last night. Around people were saying Nuno left it too late, and we were kind of saying, is it more a question of the people who were coming on? Did Nuno feel like Taiwo can play 20 minutes and Jota can come on for Elanga and be a difference maker? Is it more a case of we didn't have the subs to match Liverpool's bench? It sounds like I'm being down on our subs, and I'm not. I'm just saying at the very top level, do we maybe just need that difference maker sub? Do you see what I mean or not?
Yeah, I think going back, I can remember the second European Cup when we were absolutely shattered. Because we'd been taken up on, we'd played so many games in 2 seasons, but we kept more or less the whole 11, on the pitch. Because the problem you've got when you come on late and you're in that intense a game, you're not up with the pace. You've got to get your concentration levels right. You've got to get the pace of the game pretty quickly. And I thought that was difficult for Jota. Was it not? Was it? Have I said the right one here? Or
Jota came on, yeah.
Yeah. I'm not sure that it was his sort of game to come into at that intense period, because we're under massive pressure. I think the players that were on the pitch, you're probably best keeping them on, because, no matter if you're tired, you can still get through that barrier, as we often did when we played. And we played on crap pitches, we did. It's all about concentration. And I think you saw that from the majority of the team, especially the back four. The concentration levels were exceptional. The 2 centre-halves again were magnificent. So I think maybe I wouldn't criticise. I can understand why he brought them on, because, you could see tired minds, tired bodies. But sometimes, you get through that barrier as a player. So it was a difficult one for him, with what was going on in that second half at that particular moment. So I haven't got any criticism of Nuno for that, because, he saw it as a lot of people in the ground probably saw it. that we got tired players, tired minds, but that's not always the whole story. You can, as a player, when you're feeling like that, still summon up the strength and the mental capacity to get through that.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, we've got the Morato sub temps, and maybe we could have made that 5 minutes earlier. Maybe we couldn't. I don't know. Have we got subs for when we're not looking to close a game out? We're looking to get an extra goal and win a game. I think we have against certain teams, and I suppose I'm asking the same question. Have we got it against the elite teams, do you think, or not?
No, I agree with Dan's take in the comments. So if they don't score from that corner, we probably do bring the third centre half on a bit earlier and try to protect what we have. But Nuno picked a team at the start of the game to try and win, and he wanted to keep those players on for as long as we could to try and affect a goal. Diego Jota comes on and bags, and plan A for shutting up shop goes out of the window a little bit. We have to score if we're going to win. So how's he going to do that? Best chance of us scoring is with two wingers on the pitch. I think you're right. It does fall off a bit, doesn't it, with the replacements that we make in an offensive sense. We can become more defensively solid by bringing on the third centre half, changing the shape, maybe adding Alex Merino for a tired Neco if the opportunity presents itself. But someone made this point earlier as well. Jota Silva is kind of gloriously unstructured, flies in to try and block defences. Shimikas beat him 3 or 4 times before he got one of those crosses in. When you need someone just to jockey and remain calm and structured and positionally aware, he doesn't have that elite weapon that Elanga has in a pace sense, or quite the trickery of Callum Hudson-Odoi. Good player, I like him, but the point I'm trying to make is there's a difference between the £50 million right winger that starts the game and the £20 million right winger that finishes the game. That's a fact, particularly against an elite defence like Liverpool. So yes, Matt, I support your assertion that we can't make impact attacking subs in the same way we can make impact defensive subs. So the score, the state of the game in and around that 65, 70 minute mark is important in the manner in which we close out a match. Really, really comfortable. If we're winning at 70 minutes, we bring on a third centre half. I'm backing us to see that out. If we need a goal and we're having to make offensive changes because legs are tired, I think our likelihood of scoring diminishes.
Yeah, and we'll talk more about Taiwo as well. So I would say we'll talk more about Taiwo in a bit later in the show, and then we'll focus on the game. Sorry, Pete, go ahead.
Sorry, I was just going to add, I mean, this whole chat, it really just shows how far we've come, doesn't it? Because I think when you look at that bench, we've got options for playing against most Premier League teams. The squad looks in a really good place. We've got players who can come on and make a difference. We've got defensive options who can come and solidify, all that sort of stuff. But we're now talking about playing the best team in the league comfortably and a team that might challenge for European glory or whatever. And we're just slightly off that sort of quality. But it shows how remarkable the recruitment's been, how remarkable the coaching's been, that we're not miles off that. And now that's what we're talking about, that sort of level of difference. But it's elite stuff, isn't it? And you can't just suddenly have that, at this point in our journey in the Premier League. So I mean, it's sort of amazing that we're having these conversations, and it should be viewed as a really positive thing rather than anything that we're down on, shouldn't it?
Exactly. And, second half, they had all the possession, looked like they could win the game. But 2 or 3 times we on the break, if we'd have made a better pass, we were 2-on-1, especially on the right-hand side, and the pass just wasn't good enough. And then late on, Elanga did really well, wriggled to the byline, put it right across the face of the goal, and nobody was there to tap it in. So that in itself was, pretty good to watch, that we've still got the power and strength to do things like that and get in good areas and create problems for them.
Yeah, and just lastly on that was what I was saying around recruitment. It's not critical recruitment at all. He's been amazing, and there's only so much money in the pot, and we wanted to strengthen the first 11 this summer, which we did, and it has on a knock-on effect of strengthening the squad. But we can't be breaking PSR rules by signing a £50 million sub. So I guess that's a further stage of our development, which we'll get onto. We'll have a little chat around that. Just before we go back to the game, just a quick reminder that on Sunday you can watch the game, obviously, at the City Ground. And if you're not, then enjoy the build-up at the NAV. Get your double stamps in January for your beer cards. And they're open from 10 a.m. on Sunday for breakfast. So do get down and enjoy the day there before you go to the pub. Right. Oh, and also I should say, Fathers will be back with his pre-match entertainment interactive quiz. There's over 300 people playing last night, which was brilliant. And I saw a good video of them singing Mull of Kintyre as well. Going back to the...
By the way, just did anybody see Greg being interviewed on Trent Bridge?
Oh, God. Does anyone not see Greg everywhere?
Yeah.
That's all we do see these days. Have we spoken about the Guardian photo yet? Or are we saving that till the end?
We spoke about the Guardian photo on Monday. I can't.
Okay.
Probably still in here. Hang on, I'll show Gary. I don't know if Gary's seen this or not. What do you reckon to this, Gary? Bear with me one sec, everyone.
One of the great love stories of modern times. Look at this.
Great couple, Gary, aren't we? I think me and Greg.
Word. The loving. It's the loving.
Exactly.
It's really nice to see that again through someone else's eyes for the first time. I feel
bad eye at the moment, I'll tell you. So.
Right, back to the game. Gary, I wanted to talk about our goal, obviously, and Chris Wood's finish, which you mentioned. One thing we haven't really discussed is around Elanga and his end product, and I feel like it's come a long way. It's improved significantly. When you think of the assist against Wolves for Gibbs White, that was a well-weighted pass, and I think he made it look easier than it was. The header back to Chris Wood against Everton, and this one as well. I thought that was a really good pass because Wood could take it in stride. So can you just talk us through that goal, Elanga's contribution and Wood's finish?
Well, we'll talk about Elanga from last season. Until the end of the season, he got more assists than Morgan Gibbs-White, hadn't he? Until probably the last couple of games of the season. So, we know he's got that ability to do that. And as a striker, that's your perfect pass. The weight was perfect. It's in your stride. You don't have to do much with it. All you have to concentrate is beating the goalkeeper. And he did that beautifully. I mean, people think when you look at it, it's an easy thing. But believe me, in those situations, it's not. You've just got to get the weight perfectly right. How many times do you see players, when you think they should get it right, they don't get it right? And in those instances, it's paramount that you get everything right. And he's doing that on a regular basis. Yeah, everybody gets it wrong now and again, but he's getting it wrong in the right way, if you get what I mean. He's trying to do the right thing in the right areas. And yeah, it's going to come off sometimes. Sometimes, it's not going to. It'll be too hard going across the face of the goal or something like that. But he's trying to do the right thing every time he gets in those areas where he can hurt people. And that's all you can ask.
Yeah. I thought it was class. I think he's playing so well, and so many others played so well. And we discussed them last night on the post-match show, but I want to focus on them again and with a slightly different slant on each of them. Starting with Murillo, Temps. I remember Fletcher's been on here quite a few times talking about defensive partnerships. You have an A and a B in a partnership, like Van Dijk, like Ruben Diaz, and I think he's right. And I totally agree with that. But when you look at ours, like Milenkovic is obviously an alpha in probably every sense of the word, just the way he defends. But Murillo as well, it feels like he could be the elite player in any partnership. Well, his performance last night was unbelievable. And he's got that special ingredient that I don't think you see that in any other Premier League centre-half, do you? The things he can do, the things he can take on, the way he intercepts the ball. Was that as good as you've seen from a Forest centre-half in, I don't know how long?
It was a double A side last night. I think Murillo and Milenkovic were both excellent. They've dealt with everything that's been thrown at them this season. What will he become? He looks every inch a Real Madrid centre-half to me. I think his poise, his ability to pick a pass. Let's not forget he's Rasp-Rom from 30 yards, 2 foot wide, and a point of the game where we were 1-0 up. He's still about to score that worldy goal, isn't he? To add to his one career goal, which belies what I think he can be in an attacking sense. But he earns his money in and around our box, and the frequency of the clearances. We'll talk about the corner at some point, which is the only minor mark against his name in an otherwise flawless performance. I think his value goes up and up. I think he walks into any team, including the Liverpool team. I think I saw Virgil van Dijk having a little word in his ear at the end of the game, and every top-end Premier League team, every major force in Europe will be looking at Murillo, because this absolute unknown has gone on to, along with Milenkovic, make a team that faltered from set pieces become one of the most resilient in the Premier League. I think he added £10 million to his value last night. I rated him highly before. I think he was exceptional and he'll continue to develop. He's 22 years old.
Yeah, and it highlights the insane recruitment. I think he'd played 20 games in his whole career before we signed him. So, yeah, total top marks for everyone for that one. Neco Williams, Pete. on Salah. We discussed him last night as well, but just specifically on Salah, I was looking earlier. He scored 18 Premier League goals. 16 have been in the second half. And I had a quick look. Most of those are kind of after 80 minutes. Salah, I think he preys on tired fullbacks, and Neco was gassed, but he had the wherewithal and the concentration to limit Salah, I think, as much as anyone can this season, even though he had one off the line. You're never going to shut Salah down completely, but I think Neco did everything he could in that game, didn't he?
Absolutely. And just before I get onto that, I don't think I've ever agreed with anything more than terms describing Murillo and Milenkovic as a double A side. Those lads, I mean, nobody's putting Murillo on the B side. Those lads are, we can work it out, and Day Tripper by the Beatles, aren't they? It's just what a phenomenal thing that is. Neco, I thought it was probably the defensive performance of his career. And I think in a sense it shouldn't be a surprise. When you look at his stats, he is right up there against any fullbacks from the top leagues across Europe for tackles, blocks, clearances, aerials won. He's putting the numbers in now. And we sort of saw this before, didn't we, with that run he had last season where he really grew into the team and looked like one of the best defenders around. And clearly he had a bit of a knock this season with Moreno coming in and looking like he cemented that place. But he's properly growing back into it. And I guess, I mean, I think we sort of vaguely chatted before the game about whether Nuno might be tempted by Moreno after his performance earlier this season, or whether Aina might be the one to play against Salah, given that he's probably our best sort of one-on-one defender in the squad and such like. I think these were all sort of part of the ghosts of the thoughts echoing around the head again, ahead of such a big game. But I thought Neco was absolutely phenomenal. And like you say, he wasn't the only one, but he was really running on gas as the game went on, but he just continued to concentrate. He continued to put his body on the line. There's so many of those moments where he used his one of his legs as like a long barrier cricket style just to block the ball last minute, to block the cross. I thought he was unbelievable, to be honest. And I think one of the lovely things about watching this Forest side is I genuinely feel a real connection with some of these players. You know, it's not just like a passing thing. It feels like there's a relationship there. And watching Neco through that game, I just felt so proud of the performance that he was putting in. You know, it's been a decent story for him at this football club. He's one of the long-serving players now, probably second, I guess, after Yates. And he's had a couple of moments where it's been difficult for him, where he's been out of the team and people have questioned whether he can do it as a fullback, all that sort of thing. But I thought he was phenomenal against a relentless force, as good a player as the Premier League's ever seen, I guess. And it didn't look altogether that difficult for him. You know, Salah obviously had moments, and he's always going to have moments. And like you say, he is just relentless right to the end. But yeah, Neco was there, body, mind, everything on his game. What a performance.
Yeah, and Aina was there to clear off the line when needed. And we'll come on to Matz Sels as well. On Salah, as Weiwei says, every game this season, apart from 3, he's got a goal or an assist. 2 of those have been against Forest. I think the other was against Fulham, potentially. But yeah, extraordinary stuff. Before we go on to Sels, because it became the Sels show after the goal, Garry, I don't know if you've seen it back or not. I mean, I know we're being hypercritical here, but we analyse every goal because we have to. Do we defend the corner better if you take Sels out of it? And
of course we do.
Yeah,
you've got to. I mean, the guy's come on. He's not the tallest player on the pitch, and you've got Milenkovic and Chris Wood there. And I think the TNT, panel afterwards picked up on that, the positional sense. Nobody was near him. Chris Wood was behind, and he didn't seem to have anybody. Your most dangerous area is in that central area of the box when it comes in there. And, to get a free header at that particular point, and our fullbacks were both on the post, couldn't do anything about it. That was disappointing. It's a slight switch off. And that's what happens at the highest level. When you just switch off, you give somebody of that quality a little bit of room, he's going to punish you. And you have to learn by those mistakes. We saw how bad we were last season at defending set pieces. We've turned that round, big style because of Milenkovic, I think. I love to see him dictate everything as well. He's the one who's always moaning and he's gesticulating and he's shouting. He's not happy unless things are 100% right. And I love to see that in a player. And I think those around him, respond to that. they're not vocal like he is. You need that vocality in there, and he's giving that, and I think it's rubbing off on the people around him.
Yeah, I think we're pretty much pure zonal on defending now. I think that we man-marked Van Dijk, and I think the rest was zonal, which was interesting. Is that the best way to do it, Gary, do you think, or not?
I've never been a zonal fan. Space never scored a goal. It's when I was always told to come back as a striker, and I picked the most dangerous player up and didn't leave him. Zonal it's open to many interpretations, and I'm not a fan. If you got a man, you pick him up and he scores, then it's your fault. There's no blame game. There's a blame game. It's your fault. You haven't picked him up. So yeah, I'm always been a big fan of man to man.
Yeah, I mean, it's working for us this season. Obviously, it didn't last season. We were more mixed last season. So yeah, I agree. 610 people watching. Thank you very much for that. Do us a favour and hit like if you haven't already. We can't go by the whole show temps without doing a bit on Matz Sels, so I'll throw that one to you. A series of excellent saves at 1-1. Again, his best performance for the club, surely, wasn't it?
Yeah, he was outstanding again last night, and I've come to expect it. I think he's one of the elite goalkeepers in the Premier League, at least on form this season. Would we have been critical of the manner in which Alisson Becker conceded that goal to Chris Wood? If we were being hypercritical, perhaps we would. So every time something's conceded, there's something you can do better. I'll echo what I said earlier about Gakpo being clever, the way he used his hips to pin Sels without fouling him. I think he could have been a little bit more aggressive in that moment. But after that, the reflex saves, the positioning, rushing shooters in the box, and just anticipating and being where he needed to be. There was a great save from Salah on the occasion that he got past Neco Williams. That was a great tip when he was trying to drift that one towards the back stick as well. I rate his distribution. I rate his command in the air generally. But I think that shot stopper accolade that we gave to Brice Samba and others before needs to apply to Matz Sels as well. He was a January signing, which often fills you with a bit of lower expectation. He was a value signing. We didn't drop big money for him in a position that had been troublesome for us. I rate him extremely highly, and I hope he's our goalkeeper for more seasons to come. He had a great game last night. I would put Murillo ahead of him in the man of the match stakes, but he was the second best player on the pitch for me.
Yeah, I had Murillo and Mark did as well, and I think Emily had Sels. Well, I'm not quite sure. Seb Hutchinson, who watches a lot of football and is a good judge, says the best goalkeeping performance I've seen for some time from Matz Sels. I noticed on Twitter as well last night. One other player we didn't really touch on last night, Pete, because there were those three performances were just levels above, I thought. But Elliot Anderson in midfield was probably the best midfielder on the pitch. In fact, I've no doubt in my mind he was the best midfielder on the pitch. He showed again what a kind of a well-rounded player, especially off the ball, like Gary said. His work was exceptional, I thought.
Yeah, I'm sort of running out of stuff to say about Elliot Anderson. I mean, went into the concourse at half-time for a bit of a couple of laps. I just said to one of my mates, like, what a player we've got on our hands there. And he's another, I guess, whose progression is pretty remarkable. I suppose in his case, it might be as much about just getting regular football, being made to feel like the linchpin of a team for the first time in his career, as it is about the coaching and the general team atmosphere and such like. But I mean, is there anything that he hasn't got? His levels of industry are incredible. Brilliant defensive numbers. He can pick a pass as well as anyone on the pitch. Set piece delivery when we need it. Massive battle. He's so competitive. I mean, his feet in tight areas, absolutely incredible. It's like he's got the sort of industry and dominance of a brilliant number 6, and he's got the feet of a number 10. And I just think, when you think about the maths involved in his signing, it's I think that's going to go down as good a signing as Forest have ever made in their history. I mean, as far as I can see it, he's an England first team player in waiting, and there's a centre mid spot for grabs in that team, whether it's Angel Gomez, Curtis Jones, Conor Gallagher. Genuinely, I think Anderson isn't far away from being the best of the lot, and he's hardly played any first team football in a row at this point. This is his first time in his career that he's been playing week in, week out. I think the sky's the absolute limit for the lad.
Yeah, definitely, I agree. Let's look ahead around the big picture a little bit then before we talk about Taiwo. We've got Liverpool out of the way now, Gary. We've played the best team. Chelsea drew last night. City drew last night, and I've seen highlights that they should have lost again, I thought, against Brentford. Do you feel Liverpool will go on and win the league now? Because you were quite bullish on the title, the chances. Do you feel Liverpool will go on the league and win the league? And do you feel like we will get in the Champions League now from what we've seen after so much of the season?
Well, I don't see why we shouldn't get in the Champions League places, but Liverpool have got a lot to do. They're in the Champions League, they're in the Carabao, they're in the FA Cup. They've got the league, and the last 3 games, drew at Anfield against United, lost to Tottenham, drew with us. You know, they did play well last night, but they've not won in 3 games, you know, which has not been their style at all this season. And the more games that are going to pile up, the more, you know, injuries they'll pick up, the tired of the minds and bodies might become. And that's, you know, the number of games might just go against them. Yeah, and that's what everybody's got to believe. And, you know, anybody's capable of beating anybody. You know, if we can take 4 points off Liverpool, people will look at that and say, well, if Forest can take 4 points off Liverpool, what about us? And I think the Brentfords and teams like that are the more dangerous teams, you know, to play against top teams because they've got nothing to lose. And, you know, we've got Man City to come at home. We've got Chelsea. Have we got Chelsea to come at home?
Yeah, last day of the season, yeah.
We've got Arsenal to come at home. You know, nothing to fear. You know, so why shouldn't we? You know, people will be fearing coming to the City ground. You know, the way we play, you know, the teams are thinking they can stop us. Right, we're going to be the team to stop Forest doing what they do, that counter-attack. But nobody can do it at the moment. You know, and that's testament to Nuno and the players because, you know, the resilience and the togetherness is there for everybody to see. And after every game, you can see it's like, you know, they've won a major trophy because they're celebrating what they've done on that particular day. And when you've got that togetherness in your dressing room, you've got a big chance of making things keep happening. And we saw against Luton, 11 changes, and we win 2-0, although Luton had more possession than us. It doesn't matter. You know, so we've got strength in depth as well. So if anybody does get injured, then we've got cover. But that's the Taiwo thing. You know, I wouldn't get rid of him. Well, I'm sure we'll talk about it because, you know, if Chris does pick an injury up and then Taiwo, you know, it goes in January, we don't get the replacement we want to, then, you know, all the good work we've done so far could just unfold in front of us.
Just before we come on to Taiwo, just finishing off this point, I'll ask the other 2 lads as well. Just say we're second on 41 points, 5th place, which should probably get in the Champions League this season as it stands. Newcastle on 35 with a game in hand, so 6 points behind. City on 35, having played the same games, and Bournemouth, who are looking a really good team, even without strikers. They played well last night, 34 points. So same question to you, Temps, first around the bigger picture and that Champions League thing. Now we've got Liverpool out of the way. How are you feeling?
Yeah, I do think we'll finish top 5. I do think the Premier League will earn that 5th Champions League qualification spot on the coefficients. I'm looking ahead to our fixtures now. We haven't got a midweek game until Arsenal on the 25th of February. So we go consecutive weekend games against Southampton, Bournemouth, Brighton, Fulham and Newcastle. None of the traditional big 6, so to speak, in that run. And they'll be looking at us for a different lens to what they would have been 3 months ago. So, yeah, I think the boys have proved beyond any doubt that they're contenders for a Champions League spot. I think they'll get there. Every time Man City, Chelsea drop points as they did last night, that threshold for finishing the top 5 just comes lower and lower. It's probably at the minute hovering around 67, 68 points to make the top 5. And I think that's well within our reach, given the fact we've stayed relatively injury-free. When we have had notable absentees like Danilo, Sangare, others have stepped in and done their thing. We've got a very consistent team selection, style of playing. We're now confident to impose that style with a back 4, even when we're playing against the best team in the Premier League, as we did last night. We've got a manager we all rate. We've got players we're all behind. And there's absolutely no reason why we can't finish in the top 5.
Yeah, as Marty and Pat say, Bournemouth, I'm not writing Bournemouth off as a team to ghost in. That's a big game coming up, and they're our bogey side. Perhaps that's the benchmark. I don't know, Pete. What do you think about that and the whole wider picture now after last night?
I feel like I'm sort of developing a split personality when I'm trying to think about this, to be honest, because I think a big part of my head tells me Forest Champions League. I mean, it just still doesn't quite compute. It just seems so ridiculous. But, we keep doing these podcasts every week and it's getting closer and closer and they're not tripping up. They keep showing us what they are. I agree with everything Temp said, and everything he says makes you think, well, why not? I think it feels sustainable. I don't see that defensive resolve, that team spirit, the qualities we show going anywhere. And we're still, I think, ruthless in attack in the moments where we spring the counter. So I don't see it changing. And I guess that must mean that Champions League, that sort of top 5 places, feels like it is going to happen. I sort of can't. I'm not sure if I can really bring myself to say it still or not. It's just a very confusing time to be a Forest fan. I think most of my time supporting Forest has been largely quite grim. Season tickets going down to League One and all that sort of stuff, and it's hard to get your head around what's going on. But when you lay out the evidence, it feels like we're a very, very strong shout for a top 5 or 6 team. I think that there are teams that I'm still expecting to come on strong for various reasons. I think we're going to see team strengthening in January. Whether that makes much of a difference, I think it's hard to say, because it isn't the easiest time to do business and then suddenly integrate players into the team and for them to have an impact. I'm not expecting Newcastle to go anywhere. You've got to think that teams like Arsenal and City are going to get better because they just don't look as good as they should be. But I mean, there's no reason to actually be sure that that's the case, because teams sort of are what they are, aren't they? You see what Forest are right now, and you don't see that going anywhere. And I think the same applies for an Arsenal team who look a little bit cooked and a little bit under their potential. Why would that change? So I don't know how to talk about this. I'm arguing with myself. I'm confused. But I mean, I feel like Forest are a top 6 team, definitely. And, saying that means that there's a very good chance they're a Champions League team. And at some point, I'm going to have to get used to that and stop being so baffled by this whole thing.
We'll talk you through it. We'll support you through it, Pete.
Thanks, mate. I think you need some group therapy.
You talk about Arsenal at the moment, not reaching their potential, but Arteta's got it wrong again, hasn't he, with strikers? So that's how things can go away from you if you don't get it right. Strikers are the most important people in the team, because no matter how good your defenders are, if you're not scoring at the other end, you're not going to get anywhere. And we've got a guy who's, in double figures up there. And if he gets injured, then we could struggle. Jesus is out for a long time. He came back in the side, was scoring goals. Havertz is getting all the abuse, from every angle because of, his performances at the moment. And that's, Saka's out as well. So that's really nullified their threat a little bit. So that's how important this January window could possibly be for us, to get, if Taiwo is going, to get somebody in to replace him, to put a bit of pressure on Chris. And, it can soon fall away from you. We thought Chelsea were going to be the ones, but they've drifted away. Nobody saw the Man City thing coming, and that's helped Liverpool in what they do. But we just saw how impressive Liverpool were in all areas last night. Maybe not so much fullbacks, because our wingers did cause them problems. But, they've got so many different players who can make things happen in that final third, like we are on the counter. So it's important to, just get things right in January. Don't, take your eye off the ball, personnel-wise, because I think the recruitment at Forest has been absolutely terrific. And, if we can continue that, we've got a good chance of keeping the pressure on.
Everything Garry said there leads nicely into a discussion around Taiwo and West Ham, which we'll get to. But just before that, a quick thanks for Vesta Blinds for supporting the podcast, as they do every Wednesday. If you are looking to buy some blinds or shutters and you're on a podcast and there's light coming over your shoulder every week, Pete Blackburn, then maybe Vesta Blinds are the people for you. Subsidised by this podcast host, obviously. Or if you're looking for blinds or shutters in general, made to measure in your house across the East Midlands, mostly around Notts, then do check out the link in the description. Right, let's talk about Taiwo a bit more then. I'll ask Temps as well as Pete. Temps, I'll read out this tweet from Florian Plettenberg, who is pretty well connected, I'm sure, and seems very reliable. He's a reporter for Sky Sports in Germany, so he's probably got connections to Taiwo's camp, I bet, through his time in the Bundesliga. He says West Ham are now making a serious attempt to sign Taiwo Awoniyi with immediate effect. Talks have started. There's a lot of things around that, around the fee, where Forest are in terms of having a replacement lined up. So there's a lot of moving parts to it. What's your general principles around this deal? Does it all depend on money and who comes in?
The general principle is we can only sell Taiwo if there's a replacement coming in. We can't run for any period of time with Chris Wood as our sole striker. I don't think anyone in the squad becomes a makeshift striker and maintains anything like this run of form that we're on. What's Taiwo become? He's become viable backup for 20, 25 minutes a game when we need to pull Chris Wood off, given the quality he's going to bring to the next game. West Ham are motivated buyers. Antonio out for a long period of time. I think Jared Bowen's broke his foot. I think Fulkrug's injured at the minute. They have got a couple of makeshifts. Paqueta could do a job at 9, one or two others, but they're the most motivated buyers in the Premier League. And if you look at the tape of what Taiwo can do when he gets minutes, he scores goals, he occupies defenders, and he's a player I'd back in that scrap. Selfishly, is the money worth it to us at a time when we've got one striker that we're back at this level? Of course it's not. If Taiwo goes, it has to be because somebody's coming in the other way. We do have a relatively calm period of fixtures of playing once a week for 4 weeks now, and there's more than enough time to get something done. And the last thing I'd say on this, I think Taiwo is one of those players, like I could name anyone here, Brennan Johnson, Joe Worrell, the manager Steve Cooper. They've been part of a journey at a time when we've needed them, but our aims, our ambitions, and what we're achieving on the pitch has moved past them. And while we can credit him enormously for keeping us in the Premier League for the past 2 seasons with various goals and performances, I think we are now at a stage of our evolution where we need a better player to be the understudy to Chris Wood, or to put more pressure on him for a start. Because over the past 18 months, Taiwo hasn't done that. He hasn't got fit or produced the form to a point where he's going to displace Chris Wood from the team, which everyone thought he would do for a long time. So you do have to get rid of good players to bring in better ones. I'd be extremely thankful for what Taiwo has brought to the table, but we are moving through the gears, and that means we need to recruit. And if the money's there from West Ham and we can find a suitable replacement, it's a deal that I'd do.
Pete Blackburn, a man with a halo. There's too many calls here for the lighting. You love Taiwo. I love Taiwo as well. I think we all love Taiwo. We've probably seen the last 2 games, even that little cameo last night, what he is. There was a touch on the touchline, which was just horrific, where he just kicked it straight out. But then, like, last minute of the game, he held the ball up, he popped it off to a fullback. We went up the pitch, and that was the final whistle. And we'd seen the game out, which is probably what he was brought on for. So, attempts to make some valid points there about, is he what we need right now going forwards? What do you think about that and Taiwo, having seen a little bit more of him in the last 3 or 4 weeks?
No, you're right. Attempts did make some valid points, and also some that made me giggle a little bit.
About pulling Chris Wood off.
Yeah,
I think I probably would at the minute if he keeps up this run of form.
Absolutely. I wouldn't rule it out personally. I have to separate the sentiment here, and I think in terms of sort of hit on that perfectly. He has obviously been a big part of this journey for us, and that's why it feels sad to be talking about him potentially leaving. Like, I think the principles are probably pretty solid, to be honest. If he goes for a fee that is decent PSR profit and we've got a replacement, then it's hard to argue with, isn't it? Because he's struggling to make an impact as he is right now. He obviously is the sort of striker who can only play in one role in our team, and he's not going to dislodge Chris Wood from that place. So it may be that it's easier for us to have someone in that sort of role who can also play across the front line, perhaps, and that gives us more opportunities to get them involved in the team. I think it's really difficult with strikers because we play one, and I just don't know how you convince someone who's better than Taiwo to come to the club and you can keep them happy and all that sort of thing. But obviously there's succession planning for Chris Wood as well, who's not a young man. I think it's really difficult, but I think if the money's right, in terms of PSR profit, and we've got a replacement, then it's going to be very hard to not let Taiwo go at that point. He obviously is going to want to play football. I don't really see how he can get back to the player that he was, if indeed he can, without having that sort of regular game time. So I'd be really sad to see him go, because he's meant a lot to me and to lots of fans. But as Temp says, this is just where we are now. You have to replace good players with better players and more flexible players and such like to keep progressing. I thought he did another good job when he came on, aside from the comical, horrible touch. And it was sad. It's a bit sad to hear, I think, a certain section of the fans jump on that and take a little bit of, not pleasure, but sometimes it just feels like players like him and Yates, as soon as they make a mistake, there's an opportunity for them to say, "Yeah, I told you so. I was always right about him being rubbish." But generally he's been doing a good job when he's come on. I think so. I think it's worth saying that. But it's hard with him going if the circumstances are all right. The only other thing I'd say about it is, and I think Fletch made this point last time he was on, if things continue as they are, we're going to need another striker as well next season, because I don't think we'll be able to have Chris Wood and one other going into 2 games every week. So that's another thing to consider, and how you get that balance right is difficult.
Can I just remind people of the problem we had at the start of the season to get a striker in? 3 turned us down. And who's to say they won't turn us down again? Because despite where we are, they'll probably say, "Oh, well, the Forest bubble will burst," like a lot of people are saying. But 3 strikers turned us down. And that's how difficult it is to get the right person in. So you're going to get a tried and tested. Because when Taiwo is fit, how many people said he's one of the most unstoppable strikers in the Premier League when he was doing what he was doing, when he was in the team, when Chris wasn't playing? So remember things like that, how difficult it is to get the right striker, because all the bigger teams will be looking at the right strikers as well. So Forest might be down in the pecking order again. I mean, Nketiah, he wishes he'd come to Forest now. He's having, a torrid time. I don't know what the other 2 lads who turned us down are doing, but, that's the difficulty we had of signing a striker at that particular point, and it might happen again.
Marmoush is going to Manchester City, isn't he? I think, by the look of it. And Jimenez, he seems like he's got his begging bowl out to come back here. Just on Taiwo, I think anything over 7.5 million would be a profit PSR wise. So that is something to bear in mind, certainly. A few people in the comments saying that there's too many ads on the stream. I've just had a quick look. It's set to normal, so I'm hoping that's just an anomaly. So apologies for that. If you're getting loads of ads, you shouldn't be getting any more than normal. We do pay the bills, but I said it, people inside baseball, I said it's a balance, which is like medium. So yeah, sorry about that. Just quickly on Ola Aina before, I know Temps has got to go shortly. There was a report in The Athletic by Paul Taylor just on his contract saying that there's a clause in his deal which will see it extended to the end of next season, so 25-26. If he plays a certain number of appearances this season, a mark he's very close to already, and Forest are in talks to renew his contract. So basically, I'm pretty sure Olorine will be here at least for next season, if not beyond. Temps, you've got to go very shortly. Any final thoughts before you depart?
Well, I just want to acknowledge my faux pas in announcing that I was preparing to pull Chris Wood off. Quite a few people in the comments seized on that opportunity to mock my turn of phrase. And yeah, that's given me a little bit of a pep up before lunch. So your audience is delivered exactly what I'd expect from them, to be honest, Matt.
I'm going to give Chris Wood a pep up before lunch as well, I think.
Good stuff. Right, Temps, we'll let you go. You're back tomorrow with Pete as well, both doing back-to-back podcasts, which is lovely, but good to have you with us. We shall let you go. Right, we'll carry on just for the last couple of seconds. Right, there goes Temps. Garry, anything you want to add before we depart?
Not really. I think we've covered everything. I just think the January window is going to be so important for us. And like I just mentioned, you've got to remember that people turned us down striker-wise. And, they might still do that. And it'd be just a shame that if we don't get the right person in and then Chris, God forbid, does get injured, then, we're going to regret not signing somebody just to fill in for him. And if you let Taiwo go, because I said when he was in the team, he was the best thing since sliced bread, people were saying, and Chris was probably getting a little bit of stick, saying, well, he's this, he's that, he's the other. Now he's the best thing since sliced bread. That's how opinions change very quickly. So I think, we don't want to lose what we've achieved so far this season. And I don't think they will. I think they'll just back it up and do the right thing and sign the right people, because, recruitment has been paramount and we've got it right.
Random pieces here about loaning him to West Ham. That doesn't seem like it's on the table, but a deal where he plays minutes and comes back to us refreshed would be interesting, certainly.
Talk about, will Ward-Prowse go back to West Ham now? Potter's in charge.
I don't think they will. I read somewhere there's no chance of him going back on a West Ham news site. So we'll see about that. One other quick thing about Taiwo is this thing that he only scores tap-ins or shins it. That's another thing I don't think is particularly fair. If you think of Palace away on the last day of the first season, he scored a great goal, and there was one against West Ham where he chested it down and volleyed it in. And I think he's got an all-round game when he's fit and firing. It's just that he's not. So that's a huge debate we've done to death today, certainly. Pete, anything from you before we go?
Just a couple of quick things. I mean, what an absolute relief it was to read about the circumstances of Aina's contract. It all seemed a bit unclear and a bit confusing with the talk of options and whether he was out of contract or not. But to have Tails clear that up was a massive relief. I guess the worst case scenario now is that he's desperate to go and we get good money for him. But fingers crossed he'll be sticking around and we've got him for another year, because my word, he's been phenomenal for us. A guy who can do what he does and can do it on both sides of the pitch is an absolutely enormous asset for the football club. So that was a real relief. And just the last thing, I had a nice message yesterday from a chap called Glyn, who works in Canada. He's from Nottingham, but he teaches in Canada. And he said that all of the kids he works with are all in on the Forest journey. They're all watching the Forest Focus podcast together. I think he said yesterday was half time in the game at lunchtime over there. So that would have been a nice moment for them. But yeah, I thought it'd be nice just to give them a shout out and say hello and thank you for following the journey with us and supporting us.
Excellent. Hello, Glenn. Hello, all the kids in Canada. Not to be the 51st day of America, I don't think, but we'll see. Right, one other quick thing. As you might have seen last night, you can get podcast merchandise now if you want. There is a hoodie. Oh, that's terrible. I'm wearing the hoodie anyway, so you can get that on the website. There's a T-shirt as well version. There's going to be a different T-shirt and a different hoodie, which is very similar to the mug, the Come On You Reds mug. So check that out. There's 3 different kinds of mugs, all designed by my wife. So don't slate them in the comments. I think they're really good. But if you want to check out the website, it's forest-focus.co.uk, and I'll put the link in the description for that as well. Right, we shall be back tomorrow with Pete Temps and Simon Bristow, who you know as our Glorious Banners, perhaps, on Twitter, and then we'll have an opposition preview for Southampton as we look at that in much more detail, and then we'll have a post-match show on Sunday, obviously. Garry Birtles, thank you very much.
An absolute pleasure, as always.
Certainly was. Pete Blackburn, thank you.
Cheers, no, I'm enjoying the ongoing group therapy. Thanks very much, guys.
We're here for you. Thanks very much, everyone. Have a good day. And if we don't see you tomorrow, we shall see you soon.